I remember that she used to have Aimar's photo in her wallet, and every conference that she went to, she would show this photo to other professors. It was a Dutch professor who said that Aimar could have a very specific disease because he could notice something very specific in the photos. This is called oculorecit crisis. So the eyes have a specific anyway. The eyes are upside down and there are facial cramps. So he noticed this in Aimar. Aimar doesn't have these cramps anymore, his brother does. But this Dutch professor noticed how Aimar was turning his eyes upside down. And this is very characteristic of this disease. So they tested for it. So Professor Oonap came, we tested him for it. And I think it was the urine sample that gave us the diagnosis. This is aromatic amino acid carboxylase deficiency. What it means basically is that the brain doesn't produce three important neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, nor adrenaline. The enzyme that's important for them is deficient. There are two people who have this diagnosis in Estonia, Aimar and his brother Peter. Of course, at first we were hoping that they would get well with the treatment. Nobody told us that this treatment was there to support them. But then we understood how it worked. And the diagnosis helped us a lot. We found out things about this disease. We met up with other people and with doctors, professors who were familiar with this disease. Once I even delivered a presentation that was written by Professor Oonap. She had written this presentation, but she couldn't come to the conference, so I just read it out, although I mispronounced many of the terms, but other professors thanked me. It was an interesting time, and I could feel that we received a lot of mental support, and this kept us going. He was lying down, he could sit when we attached him to the with belts in a wheelchair, but he kept slipping off because he couldn't hold his body. He couldn't eat. Practically, he wasn't speaking in full sentences. He would say yes and no. He was very nervous. Looking back, he was frustrated easily. We had many problems at home. He was aggressive. He wasn't a happy guy. Aimar was able to lift his head up for about 10 centimeters, but he went to school. He finished both basic school and vocational school. At the same time, his mother looked for help in the international community and attended different conferences where possible treatment for his son's diseases was discussed. I started going there for about 15 or 10 years ago, and then I met Professor Jankevich there. Back at the time, he was testing the same genetic therapy on monkeys. On each and every conference, he was showing these surgeries. And I was a bit skeptical. I thought that we won't get this treatment. We are just looking at the brains of monkeys, but this won't give us any actual treatment because he was born with this gene and he will die with this gene. I didn't even know where genes are. It turned out that this was the spot that needed treatment. The main focus on the conferences was on how to get the right treatment cocktail to make the lives of my boys easier. Because I had come to terms with the fact that they wouldn't get well. Dr. Bankiewicz made his first surgeries in California, and I heard that he kept making the surgeries. Of course, there was the question of the age of the patient and the financing. I think it was like 7 years ago when we were in London, Aimar was with us, and Professor Bankiewicz, who is a Pole, by nationality, although residing in America. But then professor said that he would do the surgeries in Poland. And to me, it felt like home, because Poland is so close. So we were very excited about it. And there were some other patients, one from Israel, and there were some other parents who had adult children with this disease. So we kept buzzing around Dr. Pankiewicz. He gave us some hope. Then Dr. Onap also rooted for us. Then we ended up in the Children's Foundation. The National Insurance Fund didn't support us, and then I thought that I would just get this money, but we will have the surgery. This was a huge internal struggle, also a struggle against bureaucracy, and also a struggle with the professor, because we wanted to get the surgery. People have asked me why I chose Aimar, not Peter. Peter is in a much worse physical condition. He has very weak lungs, but Aimar is strong physically and he was ready for the surgery. So this is why I haven't even considered Peter to have this surgery, because I'm afraid that in his case, this procedure can be fatal. Most patients get pneumonia after this procedure because this is an 8-hour surgery. It's done in a very cold room. And also Aimar, who had never had pneumonia before, he'd never taken antibiotics before, he got a pneumonia. So we spent 9 days at the hospital instead of 5. In the morning of the surgery, there was a threat that things wouldn't go as planned. And Aimar is showing us that the reason was in his back. The surgery can't be made on patients who have something of metal in their body. But Aimar had a back surgery, he had a severe scoliosis, and he had metal rods in his back, which were made of stainless steel. Since these steel rods can heat up, which means that they might damage back nerves, and there was a high risk of becoming paralyzed from waist down. They had several consultations with doctors here and there, and the mother had to decide. This was the most difficult decision I've ever made in my life. I called my husband in Tallinn and told him I have 5 minutes. Shall I say yes or no? And we decided that we would take the risk. And the medical team in Poland said that they would keep her in the MRI as little as possible and as much as possible, as much as necessary. So they managed to follow the temperature. So I wasn't really worried about the brain surgery, but I was worried that my child would become paralyzed from weight down. I remember that this was what I was worrying about for the entire 8 hours. The doctors came to me during the surgery and reassured me. And when the surgery was over, then I went and touched his feet to see whether they reacted. As we can see in the photo, they injected a viral vector in his brain. This was an adenovirus with the mutated gene. So the idea was for the brain to produce dopamine at a normal level. It's an interesting disease. There are 3 enzymes that are low, then they actually just inject dopamine in order to improve mobility. Aimar doesn't need serotonin because he is a very happy and healthy guy. How was Aimar's recovery after the surgery that went on for about 9 hours? You couldn't keep your head up. Well, before you were asking me whether he could hold his head up, then before he could do that, And after his surgery, he got the pneumonia, which was followed by a severe diarrhea. So he had no water left in his body. And the first thing that we noticed after the surgery was that he couldn't lift his head. He was like a baby. After the diarrhea and all the other viral symptoms went away, he could raise his head again. They told us that we can see whether the treatment worked or not if we can see tremor in 10 days after the surgery. And the 10 days after the surgery, everything was fine. He didn't have the tics that he has now. But on day 10, I checked my watch and I could see how his mouth started twitching. And then there were tremors all over his body. They told us that 3 months would be very difficult. For us, it was 6 months. Okay, raise your arms to the side, down. Raise your hands. Okay, now touch the nose with your index finger. Back. The other one. Okay, put it back. It's been 5 years or 5.5 years since this surgery. I think the physical difference is not the main thing we are talking about here. Of course, he can sit and he can stand up. Before he couldn't even be on all fours. Now he can do it. He can also sit on the floor with crossed legs. The things he couldn't do before, he can do now. Of course, our goal is for him to start walking by himself. Aimar's mother lists all the activities that he can do now. He doesn't take any medication. He's happy. He can help his brother. And next summer, Aimar will finally get to ride a bike by himself. Use my hands now. I have a lot of strength. How heavy are the weights that you lift right now? 3 kilos. Hey, 3 kilos in weights. I think it might have been 4. I can't remember. 4 kilos. Aimar has been eating a lot of medicines throughout his life, but by now he doesn't take any. He even doesn't take the medicines that were recommended by the neurologist to reduce tics. So I purchased these medicines, but what did you say, Aimar? I don't want them. And why don't you want them? Okay, they might inhibit your mind. I'm very thankful to all my friends who helped us and supported us. And I'm also thankful for the Children's Foundation who helped us foot the bill. And I think that the state of Estonia should also be very thankful because the medicines that Aimar's brother is taking now are very expensive. Aimar doesn't need them anymore. These are huge amounts. So I think that the health insurance fund should be happy. We were helped by good people. So this guy here is worth 3 million euros. Just look at him.